you will turn criminal organizations into freedom fighters.
That's a powerful, almost cinematic prediction. A foreign invasion unites warring criminals into a patriotic resistance. It's a compelling narrative, but it's one of 3 moments in this conversation where a simple story is used to explain a deeply complex security issue. These intellectual shortcuts are tempting, but they can blind us to the far messier and often scarier reality. By breaking down these moments, we can learn to spot the difference between a compelling story and a sound analysis. The conversation turns to a hypothetical U.S. military strike in Mexico. Ed introduces a theory from a former Mexican special operations soldier he spoke with.
And I asked him, like, hey, what is the military going to do if the U.S. says, like, we're going in without your approval? He said, well, if you start fighting the cartels without approval of the Mexican government, you will turn criminal organizations into freedom fighters. And they're already integrated into the military in certain ways because some of them are working for them and some of them are working for us. So you will make the whole a cohesive force against you.
Oh boy.
Which is an interesting theory.
This freedom fighter theory is a powerful warning about unintended consequences. And it's true that cartels would use an invasion for propaganda, but the theory presented here goes a step further, suggesting this propaganda would actually succeed in uniting them into a cohesive force. But would it? These organizations are not ideological. They are profit-driven syndicates who prey on the very population they would supposedly be liberating. A more likely outcome isn't a unified resistance, but a multi-sided bloodbath. This theory oversimplifies the cartel's predatory nature and their relationship with the Mexican people. This pattern of oversimplification applies not just to future predictions, but to the explanations of the past. When discussing the rise of fentanyl, Ed offers a simple agricultural reason.
The outbreak of the prescription opioid epidemic in this country. That was like this initiation of what later turned into like, oh, well, this is off the table now because we passed all these laws and didn't put some people in jail that should be in prison, some families that I don't know how they're free.
Yeah.
But then what takes its place? Somewhere in Mexico, people were growing poppies and they said, well, let's add a little bit of fentanyl into these very weak poppy yields of heroin and see what it does. And it kicked.
Oh, so that was the source of it, that the heroin was weak?
These hillsides have been leached for years from growing weed on them.
So the topsoil was bad.
Let's.
They were doing monocrop agriculture with drugs. My God! Industrial monocrop agriculture with drugs led to fentanyl being introduced into them to make them more potent.
Weak poppies. It's a story that makes sense on the surface. A weak crop needed a boost. But this explanation misses the huge shift in the economics of the drug trade that fentanyl truly represents. The primary driver wasn't weak soil. It was the pursuit of an unbreakable business model. Fentanyl is entirely synthetic. It's exponentially cheaper to produce than heroin, requires no farms or growing seasons, and is so potent that its profit margin is almost unimaginable. The move to fentanyl wasn't about supplementing a crop. It was about making the crop obsolete. The weak poppies narrative masks a terrifying technological and economic revolution. But the most seductive, simple narrative that Joe falls for is the one that suggests a secret hidden plan. This comes up when Rogan explicitly asks for the real story behind Operation Fast and Furious, a disastrous operation that armed the cartels and killed a Border Patrol agent.
Well, let's talk about Operation Fast and Furious, which was bananas. What do you think's really going on? Because that sounds like a bullshit cover. We're just tracking these guns.
I mean, what do you do when you want to destabilize a region if you're another country? You give guns to the shit suckers.
Why would they want to destabilize them in such an immoral way that they needed this to happen so badly they were willing to give them weapons to kill each other?
I mean, it's back then it was a Sinaloa cartel trying to fight control over the area, over some people that were coming in like the Zetas and other organizations. And I don't know why would you send guns to this specific region? I'm not saying that the U.S. purposely armed a single cartel in Mexico, but that's what it kind of looks like.
Yeah.
You know, that's
no,
what
it looks like that's the only thing.
And this was
the purpose of it.
That's what it looks like. He says that's what it looks like, and he's right. The outcome does look like a conspiracy, but there's another explanation I think is worse: incompetence. Let's take the facts. The ATF had no credible way to track the thousands of weapons they let walk across the border. They ignored frantic warnings from their own agents, and ultimately, U.S. Border Patrol agent Brian Terry was murdered with one of those very guns. Now, the conspiracy angle. You could argue the lack of tracking was intentional because the goal wasn't to track, it was to arm. The warnings from field agents were ignored to protect a secret, high-level objective. And the death of Brian Terry, while tragic, was either an unforeseen consequence or, in the darkest version of this theory, acceptable collateral damage for a vital covert operation. But then there's the incompetence angle. In this view, the lack of tracking wasn't a feature, it was a fatal flaw born of arrogance. The warnings were ignored not to protect a mission, but an attempt to get ahead with a successful mission. And the death of Brian Terry wasn't collateral damage, it was the ultimate catastrophic mission failure. The very outcome that proves the entire operation was a reckless fantasy from the start. So the choice isn't really between conspiracy and incompetence. It's about what you believe is more plausible. A secret, ruthless, grand plan that required immense coordination and was willing to sacrifice its own agents, or a level of institutional failure so total and so arrogant that it produced the exact same result. In the end, the idea that our institutions can fail this badly at a goal is the real thing that needs a cover story. A challenging theory, a factual oversimplification, and a conspiratorial assumption. Each one of these moments provides a simple, digestible answer to a complex and frightening question. But in the world of security and geopolitics, simple answers are rarely the true ones. They prevent us from confronting the messy reality of economics, institutional failure, and human nature. Learning to question the simplest explanation isn't just an intellectual exercise, it's a vital tool for understanding the world as it is, not as we'd like it to be.